ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. So we are here with Professor Anthony Arnull, and we are going to talk about the Brexit effect on European Union and especially on UK. Hello, Anthony. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So, Anthony, you're here, professor, right? Here in Birmingham University.
That's correct.
And let's say, let me tell you that Anthony has PhD in law and he's a solicitor of Court of England and Wales, right?
Correct.
So we are going to talk about the Brexit effect. So let me ask you directly, what do you think about Brexit when it happened on 23rd of June? Was it a surprise for you?
I wasn't entirely surprised, but I was shocked and dismayed. I think it is bad for the United Kingdom and bad for Europe and indeed the entire world.
Yeah, we saw the effect on the night of 23rd, right? And the economy just wiped up 2 trillion, I think. So let's talk about the legal issues. What do you think the first step?
Well, the first step that needs to be taken to trigger the so-called Article 50 process, which would lead to Britain's departure from the European Union, would be for the United Kingdom to notify the European Council that it has decided to leave and wishes to embark on negotiations. That step has not yet been taken, even though the Prime Minister said during the campaign that he would trigger the Article 50 process very soon after the result of the referendum was known. And so there is some uncertainty now about when Article 50 will be triggered and indeed whether it will be triggered.
Okay, so are there any other options for UK to exit the Europe?
There aren't any other options for the UK to exit. Those who suggest that Article 50 might not be triggered tend to be thinking of ways in which the United Kingdom's relationship with the EU might be altered without leaving. This obviously poses a political problem because of the force of the referendum result, but there is speculation about a general election which might be fought by some parties on a platform of staying in the European Union, which could constitute a sort of counter-referendum. There is talk about having a second referendum after exit negotiations had been completed. It's not quite clear how that would work, because by that point you would already have triggered the Article 50 process. So everything's rather messy at the moment, and there's a lack of clarity about what's going to happen exactly over the next few months.
So what exactly is Article 50 we are talking about?
Article 50 is a provision of the Treaty on European Union, which was introduced by the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009. Previously, there had been no provision for a member state to leave. And the purpose of Article 50 was to show that membership was voluntary. So it sets out a process to enable a member state to withdraw. And the first thing that has to happen is for the member state that wishes to withdraw, it must notify the European Union that that's what it wants to do. And that begins a 2-year period during which it must negotiate with the other member states how it's going to disentangle itself from the European Union and then set out what the treaty calls the framework for its future relationship. That 2-year period can be extended, but only if all the member states agree. Whereas if you reach an agreement, if you come to an agreement within the 2-year period, that agreement can be agreed by a qualified majority of the member states plus the European Parliament. So the procedure is designed to produce a result as quickly as possible. It's easier to get a quick agreement procedurally, although not substantively, but procedurally it's easier to get a quick agreement than to extend the period.
Okay, so it can be concluded before a 2 years period.
It could, yes.
Okay, so what about the 3 million of European Union citizens that are working here in the United Kingdom and 1.2 million that are working in European Union? What do you think they will have any effect of Brexit?
Well, that's a very good question, and people in those categories now are feeling slightly uneasy because they don't know exactly what their position is. It was said during the campaign by those who were advocating leave that people, EU nationals resident in the UK, would be able to stay. But we don't know, even if they make good on that commitment, we don't know quite how far it goes. Does it cover your family members? Does it cover your aging parents who wish to come from another member state to join you? So this issue of the position of EU nationals resident in the UK and UK nationals resident in another member state would be one of the things that would need to be resolved in the disentangling part of the discussions. Other issues might be what happens to the British contribution to the EU budget. There are some EU bodies based in the United Kingdom, and they obviously can't stay here once we leave.
So we are talking about EEA states, right? So is it possible to have that kind of deal with European Union?
It would be possible to have an agreement along the lines of the European Economic Area. There are essentially three basic models, although the actual solution might be an ad hoc one specific to the case of the United Kingdom. But the three basic models are, as you say, the EEA model, then a model like the one which has been followed by Canada, which is in the process of negotiating a free trade agreement with the EU. And then the other one is just the membership of the WTO. The EEA model has certain benefits. One is that according to the Treasury study issued early on in the campaign, it is the least economically damaging. It would give the United Kingdom continued access to the single market, which is not entirely universally, but very widely regarded as very desirable. The problem there is that an aspect of the single market is the free movement of people, and that was controversial during the campaign.
Yeah, in fact.
So I think what we might do about freedom of movement, one thing to note about the EEA is that it does contain what you might call an emergency brake mechanism, which enables member states to suspend freedom of movement in times of serious crisis, which the European Union treaties don't allow, or may not allow. It also, the EEA doesn't have the political elements that the European Union has acquired, particularly since Maastricht, which the British find very difficult to accommodate in their worldview. Yeah. So you wouldn't be committed to a common foreign policy, you wouldn't be committed to a common defence policy, and you know the controversy surrounding the idea that there might be an EU army. You wouldn't be committed to taking part in that. We wouldn't have been committed anyway because we would have had a veto, and an EU army is now more likely to be set up because we're not there to oppose it, but that's another issue. So I think it is possible to envisage an EEA type solution which might be possible to sell to the public either in a general election or to sell to Parliament if that were considered the best way of dealing with it. The Canada arrangement is more economically damaging, and would take some time to negotiate. The WTO option would be very difficult because we don't have any country-specific agreements. So we would have to negotiate agreements, trade agreements with specific countries, and that would be very difficult and take a very long time.
So for now, what is the best option for UK?
My view is that something like the EEA is the best one because
so not entirely EEA, but something else like
well,
EEA.
It might be possible to negotiate some variant of the EEA, but what the EEA gives you is an existing framework that you can move into, gives you access to the single market. It even gives you some, because in order to get into the EEA, we would have to join EFTA, which we were once founder members of. You would have to join EFTA. EFTA has some trading arrangements with third countries, so it would be helpful on that front too.
Let's talk about Scotland. Do you think Brexit will break UK also?
There is a serious possibility that it could. You know what Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, has been saying. I think she's in Brussels today, actually, talking to Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, about what the possibilities might be for Scotland. This was an issue that came up previously in the Scottish independence referendum. It's not straightforward. There are a number of obstacles. First of all, she'd have to win a referendum.
So there will be a second referendum in Scotland?
I think it's almost inevitable that there'll be a second referendum in Scotland. But it won't be called unless and until the Scottish National Party is confident of winning it.
Sure.
There is some time constraints because their plan, I think, is to get the referendum won before the United Kingdom actually leaves. So then they can say, we're not asking to join from a position outside the Union. We are in the Union and we're asking you to let us stay. Sure. And part of their case would be that we've been in the Union since 1973. Yeah. All our laws reflect the obligations of Union membership. So we can do it seamlessly. We just have to stay where we are. The difficulty is that Scotland is a region of a member state. The treaties don't envisage that a region of a departing member state might remain within the European Union. And there may be other member states which have separatist movements within them who do not wish to encourage separatism, and they might see this they might see the idea of making concessions to Scotland as providing encouragement to their own separatists. So if they were to take that view, they'd oppose it in the negotiations. So and then there's a load of domestic questions about how the UK government would respond if there were a second Scottish independence referendum.
Is there any possibility for Scotland to say in UK and also in EU? Is there any possibility for Scotland?
No, I don't see that. The treaty doesn't envisage regions of states belonging to it. You either have to be in a member state or a state yourself.
So there might be a second referendum for independence of Scotland, and then they are able to go in the EU, right?
If they were an independent state, then they would be able to apply for membership. That's less attractive to them than staying in, because there is a little queue of countries applying for membership, and Scotland would have to take its place in the queue. It might move up the queue more quickly because of the fact that its laws and practices already comply with the obligations of EU membership.
So what about the Northern Ireland? Is it in the same situation of Scotland, or is it different?
I think Northern Ireland's situation is slightly different for two reasons. The main reason is that it has a land border with the European Union in the form of Ireland, and the other reason is that it is smaller than Scotland, and I'm not sure that it's viable as a state in its own right. So the issue, the main issue with Northern Ireland is the relationship with Ireland and what's going to happen about the border.
Yeah.
The border during the Troubles was closed. It is now open. People have become accustomed to moving freely backwards and forwards across the border. And so there is an issue about whether the border is going to have to be closed again in order to stop people who are in the European Union from moving illegally into the United Kingdom. There are issues about the effect of Brexit on the Good Friday Agreement and the institutions which were set up to monitor the implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. They were all established on the assumption that the United Kingdom and Ireland were members of the European Union.
Yeah.
It's probably the case that that sort of formal obstacle can be overcome. But what's less difficult to foresee is the effect on public opinion in Northern Ireland of the fact that we're no longer in the European Union, and that there is now this formal divide between the north and the south of Ireland, and that I think might cause tension in the north.
So if we talk about Brexit and the effect it had on Europe, and now we are talking about France to exit Brexit, and there is Netherlands that also want a referendum. So do you think it's the end of EU?
I don't think it's the end of the EU myself, although I recognise the danger of a domino effect. I think in most of the member states, whilst there is a strand of Eurosceptic opinion, it hasn't reached quite the level that it's reached in the United Kingdom.
I think Le Pen, the next, she's going to run for president, and she's promising a referendum for France.
Yes, and her father did quite well in a previous presidential election in France, but didn't ultimately win. So I think there are undoubtedly dangers, but I think one of the reactions of the member states, and this partly explains, I think, their frustration at the delay in triggering the Article 50 process. Part of the reaction is going to be to circle the wagons and to reassert the importance of the European Union to their societies and to their economies, and to move forwards. So there will be pressure from some quarters within the European Union for there to be closer integration, especially in the Eurozone countries. There are already proposals on the table for closer integration among the Eurozone countries. And there will also be a countervailing view among some member states that the European Union needs to examine itself and find out why it has lost one of its biggest member states and what it can do, what it needs to do to respond to public disquiet. So these are uncertain days for the European Union, but I think that there is it is such an ingrained part of the post-war European settlement, and so many member states are so heavily politically invested in it that I don't believe it will.
But I think for now it's just trade in EU, and they forgot the original idea of European Union they were making. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think one of the reasons the United Kingdom has, and this is not really a legal issue, but one of the reasons why the United Kingdom has found the European Union so difficult to accommodate is that its experience of the war, the Second World War, was different to the experience of the countries of continental Europe, many of which were occupied.
Yeah, fair.
And also it's the simple fact that the UK is an island, and islanders do feel as if they've spent their history at one remove from everybody else. They've used their island status, the fact that they're surrounded by sea, to defend themselves against potential enemies, and so the British have a different outlook. Some British, I mean, I think what the referendum has revealed is a big split in British society, and one of the challenges for whoever becomes the next Prime Minister will be to heal that split and bring the community together, because we cannot remain constantly attacking each other in the way we have been during the campaign.
That's great. That's all for now, and thank you for watching us.